Will people welcome Amazon's little Astro robot into their homes?
And will the EU succeed in killing Apple's Lightning connector?
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support. Hey there, welcome back to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News. Each week we sneak across the state borders to catch up with Australia's leading technology journalists and dive into the big tech stories of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined as always in the virtual Vertical Hold studios by Alex Kidman. Now, Alex, I know you've always dreamed of a creepy robot butler to follow you around the house. What jobs would you hand over to Amazon's Astro?
Look, 2 words, Adam. Beer bot. Decades ago, when I was at ACCC, we actually had a beer bot, like one of the early autonomous things. You had to train it where it went. It got left there when I left. I think they eventually threw it away, and I've wanted one ever since. Just load that thing up with some nice beer. It can follow me around the house, and it's just, hey, Astro, beer.
So it's Jabba's barge all over again.
Yeah.
Love it. We're also joined this week by an old friend of the show in a new role. It's the freshly minted Gizmodo Australia editor, Asha Barbrashow. Asha, welcome back to the show.
Hi.
How would you put a robot butler to work?
Well, I mean, there's two types of people in this world. Those who love Amazon's robot and think it's cute, and those who think it's a surveillance disaster. But I would probably, I would have to get it to be a beer delivery kind of robot system as well. I'm stealing that idea, I think.
I'm willing to license it for a reasonable fee. Case or two of beer should do.
So this week, we're also looking at the latest battle in the ACCC's ongoing war with Google, as well as the EU's push to force all phone makers, looking at you, Apple, to use USB-C. But first, there was a whole swag of new gadgets unveiled by Amazon this week, but they're not all coming to Australia, as is Amazon's way. Asha, which Amazon gear is coming our way and what caught your eye?
So we're getting a big wall-mountable Echo. Basically, it's a 15.6-inch display, boasts a 5-megapixel camera, customizable. You can watch everything that you would on a usual TV, I guess, but it's also being able to, you can use it as a hub for all your other Amazon devices, as it is inbuilt with Alexa.
Is this the Echo that we've always wanted, or the Echo that no one asked for?
The Echo no one asked for. Its closest competitor is the Frame TV, Samsung's Frame TV.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a bit more affordable. It's going to cost just under $400 in Australia.
See, I reckon its closest real competitor, the Frame is nice and an interesting thing, but I reckon its real closest competitor is any TV that you plug a Google Assistant into.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
Because you can do almost all the stuff. The kind of widgety, notes for the family thing is cute, but everything else that it's going to do in terms of like TV presentation and so on, you could do off an Apple TV with a Siri remote, or off a Google TV, Chromecast, or off a Shield TV, or so many other devices. And they're also, actual TVs, although I think Amazon's idea is, because this is 15.6 inches, it's not just a TV. You might throw it in your kitchen, you might throw it in your garage, or wherever else you wanted Alexa to know what you were doing.
I mean, it's being sold as a family hub, somewhat of a family hub, but you could, and here's a crazy idea, you could just turn to your family and talk to them.
You mean on a video call from another room, or you mean like face-to-face old school?
Old school.
Old school, wow.
You'd have to get them off their phones first.
I might have to disagree here. I think this is the show that some people have been waiting for, because I remember when I looked at the first Google smart screens that came to Australia, one of the things I said in my reviews was a flat one of these you could stick on the wall in the kitchen would actually be really useful. Assuming you could put it in such a way that you could see it from the room, like it suited the layout of your room, it would be like that. The idea of the smart fridge with the interactive front that everybody could see and you could write notes on it. So I'm not looking at it as an entertainment device like a substitute for a television, but more as a smart whiteboard that you can hang on the wall. I actually think that's got a lot of merit. Whether anybody else wants that and whether they wanted this size is a different question, but I could sort of see how that'd work. Asher, do you think there's room for one of these in your kitchen on the wall? Would you use it like a smart whiteboard?
I personally wouldn't, but I am the type of person that has post-it notes stuck everywhere. There's something about being able to rip the post-it note off and chuck it in the bin to signal that you've completed a task for me. What is appealing to me, though, is the ability to have to put a piece of artwork up there. Obviously, being digital, it won't be as good as the real thing, but I could maybe pretend for a moment that I have enough money to display a Van Gogh.
Now, Amazon did announce a whole bunch of stuff. We're not getting a whole lot of it. One of the things they did announce were the Echo Buds. Are these friends who are going to just echo what I'm saying back to me? What's an Echo Bud, Asher?
Yeah, so it's something you stick in the ear that will talk to you. No, what it is it's basically Amazon's earbud play, so headphones, essentially. But it's already a very, very saturated market. So yay, we're getting an Amazon set to add to our existing oversaturation of, from the likes of Beats, Sony, and of course Apple and Google. I did ask Amazon why it was that they announced so much stuff and basically nothing was coming to Australia. And they said they're always listening to customer feedback and working hard on an internationalization strategy. But they decided to say that they're working hard to make sure we bring customers the products that they actually want.
That is, to use a technical term, bullshit. Because it took us years to get a 4K Fire TV stick. It was a joke how long it took them to get us one. We were on the same call and I laughed out loud at that point. It was lucky my microphone was on mute.
The thing is, and I think we should dive into what some of these things actually are, but I sort of take their point that not everything is going to sell. Honestly, some of the stuff that they've announced, I don't know would sell here. I don't know that it's going to sell in the US either. So I sort of take that point, but also we're a tiny market. And we're a tiny market, really specifically, that Amazon does not have a dominant position in.
But that's their own fault. The reason why they don't have a dominant position is because they treat us like an afterthought. And that's why Google got the head start on them. It's a vicious cycle at that point.
To an extent, yeah, they didn't. The point was that, the point I would argue, Adam, is when they had their first set of Alexa-powered Echo speakers, that was absolutely a play just to get Americans to buy more stuff on Amazon, which you can still do in the US. It's still a huge part of that Alexa play, and it's never been a part of the play here yet. It's still the kind of elephant in the room with all of this stuff is, when will I be able to say to this thing, or when am I running the risk that it decides that I just said, hey, I want to order a Lamborghini? But we've never had that. Then there wasn't so much of a reason for them to bring them here. You're right. Google got a huge head start. I actually looked up the figures on this, and the last Telsite figures for smart speakers suggested that outright Google speakers was something like 61% of the market. Apple has 4%. Amazon only has 17%. And the entire rest of the market, almost all of it, is Google speakers made by the likes of LG, Samsung, and all the rest.
Yeah.
So we're a Google country. There's not a big reason. If I'm Amazon and I'm looking at this new tech, which is largely Alexa-based, I don't have a big reason to push forward with stuff, especially kind of niche-y stuff. And I suppose we should get into the niche stuff that they announced. And let's start with the nichest, Astro. We mentioned this in the intro, but for those playing along at home, Asher, what is Astro?
Apart from creepy yet somehow still cute. So Astro is, as you know, the new robot that isn't coming to Australia, but what it is it's menacingly described by Amazon as its first robot, not its last, which is creepy enough as on its own. It is a threat. It makes sense given that it's so small and currently doesn't boast much actual utility, that there still seems that there's about 3 or so years away before, or at least iterations before it becomes something genuinely useful. And it kind of plays into their prediction that every home will have at least one robot in the future.
It's pretty commonly described as a little robot dog, isn't it? Like, it's kind of like a thing with wheels. It's got a tablet for a face.
But basically it can, in its current form, it will be capable of performing very minor tasks. So basically what you can get your Echo Dot or your existing Alexa device to do just from a tablet that is the face of the device. So it's really just a glorified tablet on wheels that can follow you around.
With security features, though. I mean, this is the other hook for it, that it's going to patrol around your home when you're not there and identify, those interesting men with the sacks labelled with swag on them.
Yeah, but can't you do that from a security camera positioned in the one spot that isn't potentially going to knock things off tables or walk into you and scare you in the middle of the night? That's what I would be most worried about. It being right there watching me when I wake up.
Sure, look, Astro will watch you while you sleep, although it's not alone there. The second gen Nest display, the big thing Google sold that on was this will watch you while you sleep and tell you how you slept. People apparently wanted that. I still don't get it. I think
that's watching without a camera. They said there's no camera on this thing, and as someone that uses it, I am baffled how it can do what it can do without a camera. Let's just say that.
Yeah. I suspect my bigger worry with Astro and home security and the burglars is, given the price of the thing, people are going to nick it.
Yeah, he's the thing they're going to steal.
It's going to have to roll away real fast because they're going to go, wow, there's $2,000 worth of robot. Forget the telly, we're having that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's $1,500 which is approximately 270,000 Australian dollars. No, it's 2,000 Australian dollars currently.
It just feels like it.
But just like everything else, exactly, hectic dollar. But it's quite brutal. But I mean, just because it translates roughly to $2,000 in Australia, if we do get our hands on it, doesn't mean that it's only going to be priced at that price point. So I think we're expecting at least $3,000-$4,000 for a robot if it does reach Australian shores.
Or you could just get an Echo Show and put it on a skateboard and push it around your house.
I'd like to see you attempt to make something. If you can Frankenstein something together, I'd be impressed.
Coming soon, the vertical hold bot. I think I have worked out the killer application for Astro. You buy one, you sign it up for an Amazon warehouse job, and it goes and earns its pay for you, shuffling Amazon packages around the warehouse. It's a can't-fail prospect, isn't it?
You're just reigniting the AI is taking our jobs with that pitch.
Sure, but in this case, I'm the evil landlord.
So it's okay if the consumers are the ones that I guess own the robots that are taking other people's jobs.
Well, I figured Jeff Bezos can't end up with all the money.
So speaking of fancy smart home things that may or may not ever make it to our shores, Amazon has followed Google and a few others with a smart thermostat. Asha, is that something that you would trust in your home?
I mean, it does what you'd expect. It mounts to the wall and shows your home's current temperature, and you can then control, in theory, all of the thermostat-related or thermostat-adjacent equipment in your home. I mean, it's meant to make energy more affordable, more kind of that energy efficiency play. But the problem is HVAC and thermostat systems in Australia are quite different. So it does require a lot of localized Australian development work, and which reading between the lines, that means working with regulators to see whether they can actually access all the energy information that they can easily access in the US, but not so much here.
And again, that brings us back to that problem of Australia being a small market. I suspect Amazon looks at it and just goes, it's not worth it.
And that's one where Google did the same. Google didn't do much with smart thermostats here for the same reason. It's not just the data, it's also the type of central and ducted heating systems we have in Australia tend to be different to what they have in the US.
One thing you haven't talked about is the Alexa device for kids, which, I'm sorry, it's just like a large smartphone that sits on a table with a kid to babysit it for you. And it's creepy.
The Amazon Glow, the love child of a smartphone and an overhead projector.
Basically.
So, I'm with you. And Adam and I both have kids who are no longer of that age bracket, really, that would benefit from it. But I would have run screaming from it even when it was. That's what I'm quite happy to kind of not see here at all. But again, that's sort of, to me, that falls into that wacky. Oh yeah, Amazon has one of those in the States brackets. Like they've got, or they had. I don't know if they still sell an Alexa powered microwave.
Right.
Yes, exactly what we've always wanted.
Yeah.
I seem to be the odd one out here because while I can see how this projector thingy is creepy, I can also see how it would be really useful. So as far as I can tell, it's like a stand-up video camera system, almost like the Facebook, whatever they call it, the
Portal. Yep.
Facebook portal, but it projects an image down onto the tabletop, but that is an image that you can interact with, which means that two people can be looking each other in the eye and talking to each other, but also, we'll say, playing a game on the tabletop in front of them, each having a copy of the game, and you can touch the things to move it around. So like kids playing games with other kids or with their grandparents or whatever, I can actually see how that solves a lot of the online interaction challenges that we've had during the pandemic, where people have tried to figure out, how do I take what were traditionally physical games and make them work over the internet? Asha, what do you think?
My nephew lives in Canberra, so it's now been over 15 weeks since I've seen him and since I've got to play any kids' games, so or even hang out with him. So the one thing that I would take away from the Glow is for that ability to interact with him from Sydney while we've been in lockdown, and even when we're not, when I am able to go visit him again, to have that interaction time without it being just on a small smartphone screen or an iPad screen, for example, something to make it a bit more interactive. So that's the positive that I can see out of it.
See, I figure this is a problem you solve with a webcam, a reasonable size display, and just maybe 2 copies of a board game.
Yeah, but how chunky is that setup? This is just one device that you can pick up and move. And I'm not trying to come to their defense here, but they've made it convenient.
They've made it convenient as long as the content is good. And this is, to me, has been a big problem with a lot of kids, or lot of kid pitch tech, is that you'll get this new wonderful whiz-bang gadget and it'll have like a couple of Wiggles titles or a SpongeBob title, and the kids get very excited by that. And then you work out, hang on, this can only do 3 things. And once you've gone through the 3 things, it's an expensive nuisance. Whereas webcam, board game, monitor, all you need to do is change the board game and you're golden. Maybe I should patent that.
This thing they're doing deals with, it was a Disney, Nickelodeon, and someone else as well. So it sounds like there could be a reasonable amount of content. But again, it could be one of those things in 12 months' time they abandon it and then they stop making content for it and it becomes whatever that little last toy robot dog was that nobody wants anymore. And it's the Abo of its generation.
Well, speaking of Disney, Asha, do you want Mickey Mouse like looking over you in a Disney hotel and being able to wake him with a Disney wake word? Because this was one of the weirder things that Amazon announced.
No, thank you.
I'm shocked.
I missed that one. What's this? Mickey's going to watch you while you sleep?
Hey, Disney.
As distinct from Hey Alexa, Amazon is adding a different wake word, which will roll out at least in like Disney World resorts. And I think they said it's also going to be potentially, I think, a paid upgrade option if you're really, really keen to, instead of talking to Alexa, you say, hey, Disney, and, and it does stuff. It does those things. I think honestly, I think the experience of staying in a Disney hotel is going to be that plastic and weird as it is. The concept that it's also watching me and there's a smart device listening in my hotel room, I'm not comfortable with. And again, I'm happy to be alone on that one, but it sounds like I'm not.
Amazon has Alexa devices installed at the Wynn in Las Vegas.
So what happens if Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas?
No, apparently not. This was obviously, it's been a while since I could travel, but this was back in December 2019. The Alexa device was able to open the curtains. I think it was I could use it to call for a wake-up call, to organize a wake-up call, and even organize dry cleaning, medial tasks like that. But the very fact that it existed in the room, that wasn't that wasn't disclosed before you got there. But again, going to your point of it being already a weird, to say the least, experience when you're at Disney resorts, I don't think it'd be too out of place. But does it have a place in the home? No.
I think if I was at a hotel that had anything like that, it'd be, oops, I accidentally bumped it out of the socket with maximum force and it's not on while I'm in the room. So we've talked on Vertical Hold a whole bunch of times about the ACCC and Google. They're not best friends. And this week saw the final Digital Advertising Services Inquiry Report. And look, let's just say that the ACCC is probably not going to be getting too many Christmas cards from Google. Asha, what did they have to say about Google and ads?
Basically, they've declared that Google is way too dominant in the ad tech space. And what that means is they want Google to share its monopolization, or what it considers a monopolization, around a little bit. I guess before we get into what the ACCC wants out of this, basically they're going after Google for its secret sauce, for its business idea. One of the many reasons why Google has become so popular and so successful, they want that shared around other players, or they at least want that to provide access to other players to enter the market.
And what is that secret sauce? The fact they know everything about you?
Data. Basically, they say Google's dominance in the ad tech supply chain harms businesses and consumers, also publishers, but mostly businesses and consumers.
Because Google knows so much about you?
Yeah, I mean, key to their argument is that more than 90% of ad impressions traded via the ad tech supply chain, pass through at least one Google service. So I guess they want to kind of limit how much data Google has, but doesn't that then just allow other companies to have your data as well? And would you, as a consumer, would you prefer just the one company to have heaps of your data, or for your data to be spread out across different companies? I guess that's a bit of a moral conundrum there.
See, I don't know that the ACCC cares about moral conundrums, but it does care about competition. And it's that supply chain, though, that I think is key, because you're right. Google knows a lot about you, but also it has its own search stuff. It bought DoubleClick. It has YouTube. It's all those individual pieces that it can put together in order to sell ads everywhere, or to have some input into those ads and how they work. I think we said, it's 90% of the market that way, which is not good in terms of competition. It's not good in terms of what publishers can make out of this stuff, but it's even not necessarily good in terms of where consumers see ads and what ads they see.
Well, basically, the ACCC wants the power to develop specific rules around this. So it has provided a handful of recommendations, but one of the first things and main things that it's asking for is for the power to change kind of the way that this is regulated or even overseen in Australia. So that would allow then the ACCC to hand down a bunch of, this is what you must do if you are to provide ad services in Australia. Basically they're concerned that the lack of competition will lead to higher ad tech fees.
And I think actually this was one of the smartest. We've said some, terrible but feeling justified things about the ACCC on this show in the past. I think this is one of the smarter things they've ever said, because they identified this idea that actually this space is fluid. I mean, 20 years ago, Google didn't exist in the Australian space. It just wasn't a factor. And legislation takes a long time to get through. We're going to get shortly to legislation that's taken an insanely long time to get through. But legislation takes a long time to get through, giving the ACCC these powers to say, right, we can do little individual kind of niche bits of legislation, little individual niche rulings, should, in theory, if properly applied, and there's tons of caveats there, of course, should enable it to then be able to deal with this stuff and deliver a better result for competition in the Australian marketplace, which is what the ACCC is meant to be for.
Well, what it wants is basically it wants the ad tech providers to publish, so you should read that as Google, to publish information on, or be transparent. So publish information on their average fees, their take rates for ad tech services. Basically, they just want that stuff to be transparent. So I don't think that that's too obnoxious of the ACCC to ask for. But they also believe that Google should provide publishers with additional information about what it does to serve. It's basically the process in serving an ad up or taking data from that ad, for example. It also wants consumers to be able to understand in easy to read terms what their data will be used for. So I think that while that's mentioned under this body of work from the ACCC, that's a whole other Pandora's box there with asking Google what it actually uses your data for.
So Google can do a better job of serving ads up, personalized ads up to me than anybody else because, in theory, at least, it knows more about me than anybody else. Is Google expected to share that capability as well, so that either it has to go? It was like when we had the separation between the wholesale and the retail arms of Telstra, and the retail arm couldn't take advantage of the fact that it had control over the actual infrastructure. Does it want to separate Google up to make sure that that the advertising people can't take advantage of all this other information, or all this other information is treated as a separate thing that all advertisers can access equally, sort of like offer a level playing field?
So kind of like a data pot of gold that everybody can
Well, a
dip
data
their hands
wholesale,
into.
yeah,
It's a big pot of gold.
but that everybody's got equal access to, which I would think, just like Telstra, a level playing field would be the worst thing that Google could ever imagine. But is that one of the things they're talking about?
I'm not entirely sure how that would work, because wouldn't you then, as Google, argue that you're the one that has built these products out to be able to enable that data collection? Why should company X or company Y benefit from my innovation, from my business model?
Which sounds like Telstra saying, we built the network, why should we share it? But the difference there is Telstra belonged to the government when they did, so you could say it belongs to everybody. Google doesn't have that bit of, but we were built by somebody else. Google can say, but this is ours. We built it from the ground up. We're not sharing it.
But then also Google says in defense that Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter are very big competitors in this space. But they've been let off the hook for now. So there's obviously a reason that the ACCC doesn't believe that they're as dominant in this space as Google. But they have their own data.
Could Google, in theory, do a Facebook, as it were, and just say, hey, we've noticed you're in Australia, therefore you can't have Google services?
Yeah, that would be an insane amount of work, wouldn't it? I mean, they haven't threatened it as Facebook threatened before they came through with that threat, as we saw earlier this year. They haven't threatened it, and I don't think they would, but I don't think it's a matter of caving or not caving. I think it is a matter of understanding that just because you want access to data, and it is the consumer's data at the end of the day, they've also built their entire business model around this. So what do you want to do? Completely pull apart their business model? So I do think that on that point, there has to be way more work on this, because it's very easy for the ACCC to say, we want this because we think it's the right thing to do. But whether it's physically possible to separate that out from Google, the company, that would just be an insane amount of infrastructure heavy lifting work, really, wouldn't it?
I don't know. I mean, can you remove Internet Explorer from Windows? Like, if we're getting back into those monopoly arguments that we've heard over the years, but is it fair to take that logic and apply it to this? Or, as you say, is it such an integrated thing that it's not that straightforward to say we're just going to break it up?
Is it fair? I mean, I would prefer no company has my data. But do I want to be able to open Instagram, for example, and see an ad that is so exactly what I've been searching for and didn't know I wanted? Yeah, I do. So from a consumer perspective, I would like these companies to continue having my data, but from taking a step back and looking at it from a journalistic lens or even a security lens, they can map together so much of my activities, even when it is de-identified, that it's just so alarming. And I do think something needs to be done before we get too used to it, if we're not already.
So for many years, we've been arguing about whether or not gadgets should all use the same one connector for data and for power. And if you remember back to the pre-smartphone days, practically every phone had its own little unique charge thing. And so if you were at work or somewhere, it's like, oh, I'm stuck, I'm out of power. Does anyone have a charger for a Nokia, whatever? Right? And you'd have to go. If you were lucky, someone else in the building had the same phone as you, because chargers just weren't really interoperable. Ever since we've seen the rise of, what was it, mini USB, the micro USB, actually, there's been this push to standardize, hasn't there? But it hasn't happened.
No, it hasn't. Not until, I guess, the EU has kind of taken the lead on this one.
And why do you think it's going to get up now? And what are they standardizing on, and who's going to feel the pain?
Mostly Apple. But I mean, looking at Apple's latest announcements from earlier this month at California Streaming, what they had 7 devices that were announced, and between them there are two different charging. Two different charging ports, but then the way that they connect to a wall plug is different again. So just within the one company of the one thing that was announced at the one event, we've got 2 different charging options.
So if this European Union thing comes through, they will be forced to put USB-C on everything, yes?
Yeah, so that's currently used by Android phones, the USB-C. So the European Commission has basically said that a common charger for all brands would benefit consumers and reduce electronic waste, I think was their tagline. And it's, to include USB-C ports on every device. Apple has obviously objected.
As Apple does. Alex, do we need a lingua franca of chargers?
Look, this is an interesting one, but it's not a new story. I really feel like I have to point this out. I wrote something on this, in fact, for Gizmodo last year, because the wheels of bureaucracy grind slow, and in this case, they grind insanely
and Europe,
slow.
Especially slow.
The EU was talking about this back in 2009. They wanted a common charger back in 2009, and what they got at that time was an agreement from all the players, including Apple, to say, "Oh yeah, we'll look into it. We'll kind of work towards it." And on the Android side, yeah, you did see a lot of commonality, mostly towards micro USB. And of course, Apple at that point had the 30-pin dock connector, that bigger, fatter one that went into iPads and iPhones. And the way it got around it in the EU was in the EU only, you could buy a micro USB to 30-pin dock connector adapter. So if your mate had a micro USB charger, you could still charge. You just pull out your iPhone, you plug the 30-pin adapter into that, and then plug it in. And Apple said, well, that meets what the EU wants. It was the classic kind of playing around the spirit and the letter of the law kind of deal. Since that time, Apple has just fought tooth and nail to hang on to Lightning because it makes money out of them. And actually, you mentioned the California streaming event and the devices which had which ends and which other ends. We're basically just talking iPhones here. In terms of the way Apple makes money, it's all about the iPhones. And they are the last true bastion of Lightning. You still get it on that cheaper iPad. And I think that's it. Someone will probably correct. Oh, and on AirPods, of course, as well. But this is where Apple makes all of its money, not just from obviously selling iPhones. It makes a lot of money out of that, but out of licensing Lightning. As soon as it switches to USB-C, it can't license anything.
Yeah, but it'll work out a way to license something else, right? That end-to-end Apple model.
But Apple likes money wherever it can get it. And I've seen the argument a few places that Lightning is still superior somehow, primarily on durability grounds, not on anything else.
Not on the cables they sell. They're bloody terrible, the Apple cables. Some of the third-party ones, the tough braided ones from, I think, Belkin make them and a few others, they are actually nice and good and sturdy. But the ones you get out of the box, you're lucky to get 12 months out of them before they fray up near the bit where they join to the phone.
Apple's argument is that regulation or mandates in this space would stifle innovation rather than encourage it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I buy that because Lightning, apart from shifting up to USB 3 for iPads, hasn't done anything since it was invented. It's been the same little connector, and Apple didn't really kind of care about that when it switched to Lightning. Because part of the other part of their argument is this whole, you're going to create lots of e-waste because people are going to have to dump all their Lightning stuff.
Well, they already have to dump them because they don't have a long life to begin with. But this is the thing, right? It's not as though they're asking them to change something that a user or consumer actively pays attention to. I'm only aware of the need to find a Lightning cable to plug my phone into it because I need to charge my phone, not because I'm some sort of Lightning cable stan. I'm not going to buy a device based on the type of charger that it has. So this innovation argument is just, I feel it's so utterly redundant because consumers don't care what they have to charge the phone with, just as long as they can charge it quickly and charge it properly.
It is also worth pointing out, I suppose, this isn't just phones they're talking about. This isn't just we want a phone charger standard. This is we want a small electronic device charger standard. And that is where you do still sometimes see those weird little pin plugs and things like that for charging like little electric fans or portable gaming systems, cameras, stuff like that. So there's standardization there too as well. But yeah, I think the EU doing this feels like a win. I can't see Apple's argument, but I think this is a rarity in vertical hold. I think we all agree on this.
Yeah, I mean, proprietary charging devices are silly. There are probably some consumers that do care, but I feel that this is a lot easier to go after if we go back to the data point that the ACCC wants to tear apart. I think that this is something that doesn't directly affect consumers insofar as it's just something that they use to charge their device. So I think that this is maybe a good place to start if they want to just hit the tech giants wherever they can to have some sort of win over them.
I don't know. Well, I think it does affect the weird way. I think this does affect consumers, and this is a problem of Apple's making. I had to do a radio interview earlier in the week, and they did call-in bits, and one of the call-ins was someone who'd bought one of the new iPhones, which don't come with a charger. They just come with the cable. They'd had iPhones before, thought, oh yeah, I'll be right, I'll be able to charge it. But because their iPhone was a couple of generations old, that used to have a USB-A type, the rectangular type socket on the plug. The new ones, of course, are actually USB-C on the other end, so they had to go out and buy a new charger anyway.
Yeah, I had that problem when I unboxed the new iPhones myself. So I'm now Frankensteining a setup to get things charged, or taking forever to charge with an older wall block thing. I don't even know the name of that thing. It's just a block, and you put your USB, or now the USB-C, into it. But also, Apple, you're showing us that you're capable of designing something with a USB-C, and I look down at my MacBook now. It's not going to be that hard for you guys. You'll be able to do it.
They love making things with just one port on it.
They love making money. It comes back to money. It just does. Well, that static sound can only mean that it's time to wrap up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Asha for joining us for this week's show.
Thanks for having me.
And now it's time to face the Vertical Hold 3 questions of doom, patent pending. Where can people find your work online? Where can they find your social media online? And the big contentious question, no explanation required, the best album of all time.
Oh, okay. Well, let's start with the easy stuff. You can find me now over in the editor spot at Gizmodo Australia. So that website is gizmodo.com.au. On Twitter, I go by Asha B with 5 E's on the end of B. And the question of favourite album of all time with no context, it has to be White Pony by Deftones.
Nice. And as always, you can catch us online at Vertical Hold AU on Twitter, at verticalhold.com.au on the web, or via the Vertical Hold Facebook page.
And just a reminder for regular listeners, we're thrilled to have Aussie Broadband as our sponsor this year, and they've given us a special promo code which gives new customers a $10 per month discount for 6 months when signing up online for an unlimited plan between NBN 50 and NBN 100. The promo code is Vertical, so hopefully that'll come in handy for Australian listeners shopping around for a great broadband service. And as always, thanks everyone for listening. Hang in there. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. Leave us a review on your podcasting platform of choice and help us spread the good word. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support.